Thank you very much. My name is Kelly Millsaps. I'm with Box Strategic and Industry Consulting. First off, a quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with Box in any way? Looks like a good majority of you. So today I'm really going to try to focus on giving you visibility into Box as a functional set of tools, but I'll try to spend the bulk of my time focused on the development side. So you'll see me go through a number of slides here fairly quickly just to kind of level set on some of the things you can do programmatically within the Box platform. The first thing to bring to note is that our mission is really to transform the way people and organizations work. It's very aspirational, but what we really see is that the legacy tool sets have some challenges for both users and corporate environments, but also in terms of the consumers that many of our customers have in a B2C context. It's not uncommon on the consulting side that every time we walk into a customer enterprise, we see a veritable Noah's Ark of different technologies, whether that's something that's been represented through organic growth or through acquisition. We typically see a very difficult environment in terms of how data is organized and what's required to really share data. So never mind those complexities, but when you get into audit and other kinds of control considerations, that environment tends to be very complex. As we look at the future of work, there's a significant opportunity for us to focus on better ways to work. So our consumers tend to demand that they can get access to anything from anywhere on any device. We also see the need to work across boundaries, whether those are organizational or potentially geographical from legal jurisdiction perspective, so things like data residency and other kinds of requirements. Organizations need to be flatter so that the data can move more quickly through organizations and through different processes. And we need to provide better insights in terms of how the data is consumed and used and can add value to different processes. Box lets you store, share, and secure all of your data in one place. So we'll talk a little bit about the platform side of that, which is our API extensions, as well as the regular web user interface. At its core, Box really focuses on files, collaboration, search, and metadata, but it is significantly enhanced beyond that. So it gets into things like compliance. So certainly many of you are going to be dealing with FINRA or other types of compliant issues in financial services. It's an easy thing to forget until the very end of a process of some sort. Whenever you're looking at your content layer and leverage of Box, you can bake in compliance from the very beginning, so you don't have to rebuild those components. So we'll talk a bit about that. You can also get into workflow automation. Third-party key management, so if you want to manage your own keys on Box, can protect you from things like blind subpoenas and a variety of other situations that occur with some regularity. I already alluded to data residency, and there are some additional restrictions that are coming down in 2018, particularly for any of your European clients. And then lastly, analytics, so being able to get insights in terms of how data is used and how you want to use it on an ongoing basis. All of those features are really enhanced through Box core applications, which get into things like Box Sync and the ability to offline access different data. Integration, so we have a partner ecosystem that is in excess of 2,000 partners, many of which have specific integration points built out or even SDKs in certain cases. We also create the opportunity through this open platform for custom applications to be developed and accelerate their time to outcome. Today, Box is being used, and these numbers are even a little bit dated, so it's about 72,000 customers and over 63% of the Fortune 500. Many of those customers are certainly in financial services, and certainly some names I hope you recognize. In addition to that, Box has the expertise to help you transform your business. So if you need assistance, particularly in the application development side, from consulting to help in terms of understanding the APIs and really help accelerate your time to outcome, we also assist with that, the integration with our partners, and also the people side, which is often overlooked, I think, as technologists. Some of the biggest challenges we have in delivery are really associated with training and change management within organizations. So now we're going to talk about the modern content platform. This is where I'm going to go very quickly through some of the functional sides so I can focus on the platform side of our discussion. First of all, Box is designed to be very simple. And I alluded to your data from any device, anywhere, and that's a core part of the experience. So no matter what you're coming into Box from, whether it's a mobile phone, tablet, or a regular full-blown web interface, you get the same rich experience. We also integrate with a variety of apps within our native browser, so we can actually support, from a viewing perspective, reading of over 120 different file types. In addition to that, we have some very core integrations. Most significant among those is Office 365. So within the Box application or within your Office 365 tiles, you can save directly within Box. We can also work with teams inside and outside of the company. You don't have to go through your administrative organization to set up different tools. You can put, from an IT perspective, the people who own the data in control of the data and still leverage governance to ensure that you understand what data is going where from a data loss prevention or intellectual property protection context. We also are in the process of releasing Box Relay, which is our first document-driven workflow capability, which also has API extensions, so you can programmatically leverage those workflows in your applications. Next, we'll focus on security. I'm going to focus really on compliance at the bottom of this in particular, where we have FINRA, PCI compliance, ISO compliance, FedRAMP, binding corporate rules, which really gets into data residency considerations in other jurisdictions outside the United States. All of those things in one platform really, again, help you not have to build out those individual components as you're building out applications, particularly its content layer. We have a very granular security model with over 7 different permission types, and it's fully auditable and includes functionality like watermarking if you have particular intellectual property that you want to protect from a viewing context. The in-region storage, so we talked a little bit about data residency. We are expanding this on a regular basis, but currently have the 7 countries that are listed on the left here and more opening all the time. From a governance perspective, governance adds to the core functionality 3 things: data classification, data retention, and legal holds. So again, all those things programmatically accessible through your application. We also offer something called Box KeySafe, which allows you to hold the encryption keys associated with your data. And again, this can prevent those blind subpoena scenarios I was alluding to. Last, we'll get into the platform side, which is the part I think most of you want to dig into. So we really expose all of our functionality that you see in the regular web user interface, if you're familiar with Box, through our API stack. We're making those APIs increasingly granular over time. I like to make the analogy, if you worked with Box last year and you saw the equivalent of 6 Lego blocks from a microservices perspective, by the end of this year, I think you're going to see something like 600. So our ability to allow you to leverage the components within Box in your application is going to get increasingly enhanced over the coming year. And again, I've hit on a couple of these things. But again, I would really call again to our partner ecosystem. There are a ton of partners that really enhance and complement the functionality of Box so that you can build out your application in a more meaningful way. You don't have to spend time building out the individual components. If you want email stacks or other components, you just go with the microservice that you need and the vendor who provides it, so you get a best-of-breed stack. Ultimately, this really results in having a best-of-breed digital experience for your employees and your consumers. And that's really what this is all about. So why use the Box platform? Fundamentally, it's leveraging proven content services. So again, the things that drive the 72,000 customers and all of the compliance components that I alluded to, as well as the governance, the KeySafe, and all of the other assorted features and functions are proven. They're the things that run in the web UI. And they're scalable at cloud scale and available for easy programmatic access. It again allows you to pick your ideal tech stack, so you can pick mix and match partners as you build your application for each of the components. and really allows you ultimately on the bottom right of this to focus time on the resources that build differentiation in your application. And that's really what you want to focus on. So what happens in a typical application development experience is that you really, at a very macro view, you have a UI, an application, and infrastructure stack. And you really have to build out those components in support of the application that you're intending to produce. Without Box, you're really looking at a variety of different content features, many of the ones that we talked about earlier, and some that are even a little bit more granular, like search, viewing, sharing, and so on, that really have to be custom coded for your particular intent. And again, all of those things take time and may not be core to the differentiation you're looking to produce within your app and its associated functionality. And that's where Box comes in. Through our API stack, you can really leverage all of the components within Box to take away the time you would otherwise be investing in those content-specific services and all of that associated infrastructure for those content-specific services. It just allows you to focus on the top part of that stack, which is your application functionality and your UI. Some examples of clients that we have leveraging and building on the Box platform. First, we have LegalZoom. So many of you may have heard of LegalZoom in terms of their estate planning services. In Box, the users are actually guided through an estate planning process. They have the ability to upload important files and exchange those with their legal representative. And they can preview the files and add comments to interact with their legal representative. Another example is in architecture and construction, where this particular app is designed for an architecture firm called Perkins & Will. It allows the users to browse through construction projects. So you look at things like the progression reports and the photos that are associated with the progression. Certainly exchange files that are associated with cost and time to complete. It allows renderings to be uploaded, and through our AutoCAD viewer allows CAD diagrams to be displayed as well without installing the application on the client side. So I alluded to those 120 different viewing supported files. Really, it helps enhance that user experience on the client side. We don't have to install a bunch of applications to view documents. Next, we'll look at H&R Block. I hope many of you have had the incredible pleasure of working on your tax your tax submissions, as I have. It's that time of year if you haven't. H&R Block is leveraging Box to help really bring a digital experience to their customers by allowing them to upload files and exchange information with their tax consultants from H&R Block. This is starting in Canada, and then we'll extend from there. Additionally, we work with Guaranteed Rate, which is a mortgage provider. And you may have seen a lot of their ads. They're very aggressive, particularly in NFL advertising. But fundamentally, this really allows customers to have a much quicker cycle time in terms of their loan process. So they can upload documents, exchange documents, sign documents, all within the Box interface. Within Guaranteed Rate's custom app interface, actually, with numerous components from Box. And then lastly, another lending type use case with a firm called Maxwell that has, again, worked to really accelerate the time from the initiation of a loan process to the completion of that loan process. So lastly, if you look at Box platform features, it offers really a secure, compliant cloud storage environment. Again, it offers some very advanced features when you look at issues associated with data residency, things like blind subpoenas, legal holds, data retention, data classification, and some of the things that we had spoken about. With that, we'll jump to questions. So the first question I have is, how does Box differ from Dropbox? I would say in numerous ways. So I'm not an expert on Dropbox, so I don't want to overstate my understanding, but I would say in its traditional roots, Box has been really focused on commercial accounts and how corporate customers leverage technology in not only EFSS, but what we call cloud content management, or CCM, and then into platform and API stacks. To my knowledge, Dropbox has focused initially on consumers and then moved into the corporate space. And I'm not sure about their focus on things like cloud content management, which is an overlap with ECM, nor their extensibility from an open API perspective. So those would be the things that come to mind. Where is Box data stored? Can it be stored in a private cloud? So as I alluded to in the Box zone strategy, today Box data can be stored in 7 different countries. We are working on expanding that fairly aggressively. We're also working on expanding the partners where you can, in terms of whose data centers you can store it in. However, that does not extend into private cloud in the context that you can store the data on your premises, for example, or in a select facility of your choosing. Next is, what kind of capabilities does Box offer to help for regulatory audit purposes? So this gets into a variety of different areas. So if we took something like HIPAA compliance, that's probably a bad example. So PCI compliance or FINRA compliance, it really all starts with the ability for Box Consulting to come in and talk to you, you and your organization in terms of your interpretations on a variety of different decision points. So typically we have a framework that we work through. So it could be, typically 30 to 50 decision points where we talk through how you interpret your obligations in association with those compliance requirements. In many cases, it's not necessarily black or white, and it's a complement with the other activities you have associated with compliance. But it starts with that. Then we also have third-party offerings that come in and look at things like FINRA compliance, validate FINRA processes that can be subcontracted for individual projects to look at an application or a process or a workflow holistically for additional fees. But we can use the same firms that we used on our compliance side. Next is, what exactly is the new document workflow functionality you mentioned earlier in the presentation? So fundamentally, I would not to avoid overstatement of its capabilities. It's what I would describe as document-driven workflow in our first version. And what that fundamentally means is that you can take a document and act on that document through, imagine something like an approval process where you want to track, each approver through a workflow of some sort. And it will extend into future versions to have a variety of more complex use cases. If you already have Office 365 Suite, OneDrive, et cetera, what does Box add? Fundamentally, every one of our customers that at least I've had the chance to work with is also a Microsoft customer. So I think what you really get into is a conversation about the coexistence of Box and Microsoft and where you get value from each of your partners. Very typically on the Box side, it gets into protection of data in a way that OneDrive doesn't support. So things like compliance, specific use cases, the ability to share externally is often comes up. And really you overlay that with their SharePoint strategy on the Microsoft side and really find the place where you have a very simple strategy so you don't confuse your end users. That first slide I alluded to with Noah's Ark. You really don't want to have 5 offerings for the same capability. So I would just say it's a story around coexistence. Lastly, what are some great examples of apps developers have built on top of your content platform? So I alluded to a number of those in this discussion, but in financial services, we are also working with a customer that I do not believe is public, though it actually could be. But it works on I'll call it the IPO market in terms of matching investors and owners if you're a startup. And how those documents and all the diligence associated with those activities has to be shared and collaborated on. So there are a variety of different use cases. We work with authorities in government in association with managing videos associated with different acts that require chain of custody and other kinds of considerations. I would say in my experience at Box, the number of use cases and the creativity of our customers has never ceased to amaze me. On that note, our booth is actually right outside of this door. I'll try to be here for at least an hour or so. So if I can answer any more questions or perhaps go in depth on some of the questions that you already asked, I'd be more than happy to do so. So thank you.